The first light of dawn had barely kissed the horizon when Delilah Montgomery stepped out of her modest farmhouse, the spring air crisp against her skin. Her hands, calloused from years of tending the land, brushed a strand of auburn hair behind her ear as she surveyed her fields. Rows of young corn stood in neat ranks like loyal soldiers awaiting her command. The clucking of hens and the bleating of lambs offered a comforting chorus, a reminder that, despite the scars left by her late husband's passing, life persisted. Delilah inhaled deeply, savoring the simple peace that blanketed her homestead just beyond Silver Ridge. Here, the world felt honest, the soil under her boots, the sun warming her back, and the promise of a new season in every green shoot. But in the whisper of the wind, she sensed something amiss, an undercurrent of tension that matched the quickening beat of her heart. Moments later, smoke curled on the eastern horizon, black and ominous. Delilah's breath caught in her throat. She climbed onto the porch rail and squinted against the light. Flames licked the sky, consuming the edge of her barn before zipping along the roof like a living thing. A choked cry escaped her lips. "Not the barn," she whispered, her voice trembling. Inside, her youngest lambs huddled in their pen. Without hesitation, Delilah grabbed the iron-braced door handle and flung it open. She raced across the yard, the hem of her cotton dress whipping around her calves, and flung herself into the smoke-shrouded interior. Heat scorched her lungs. With every ragged breath, and embers floated like malevolent fireflies around her, she stumbled through falling beams and burning haystacks, the bleats of terrified animals tearing at her heart. In that furnace of chaos, Delilah's mind sharpened. She could not fail them. With a courageous roar, she bent to lift a newborn lamb too weak to stand, cradling it against her chest as she ducked beneath the collapsing rafters. Outside, the crackle of fire mingled with coarse laughter. Delilah's stomach knotted. The Brenner brothers, Jake and Ely, stood among a dozen ragged men, torches in hand, their silhouettes dancing on the smoke-thick air. She recognized their crooked grins. They'd come to run her off, like the others who dared to thrive where the law feared to tread. As she burst back into the daylight, her dress singed and eyes stinging, one of the men raised a dripping torch. He lurched toward her, fire glinting in his cruel eyes. Delilah's hand closed around the handle of her late husband's Colt revolver, a gift on their wedding day, now the sole remnant of his protection. Her pulse thundered in her ears as she leveled the pistol. Her voice, usually soft as a summer breeze, rang out with steely resolve. "Leave this farm." Jake Brenner laughed, a low sound that carried mockery. "You gonna make us, widow?" Delilah's jaw set. Every ounce of fear sharpened into determination. Yes. In the hush that followed, the world narrowed to the burn of flame, the heat of the gun needle, and the steady pounding of her heart. Her finger hovered over the trigger. Suddenly, a pale figure appeared at the barn's edge, half lost in smoke and shadow. Delilah squinted, grooming her senses for a new ally or a greater threat. The stranger's posture was strange for this. Land, his shoulders squared, a star-shaped badge pinned to his vest, and an intelligence gleaming in his storm-gray eyes. The stranger's voice cut through the tension, low and commanding. "Put the gun down, ma'am. They're outnumbered." Delilah's grip trembled. Who was this man, and why had he risked approaching this inferno? Before she had a chance to answer, Eli Brenner snarled and stepped forward, intent on snatching the weapon. The world seemed too slow. The torch flame flickered, the stranger's hand drifted toward his holster, and Delilah's breath caught in her chest. And then, "Before we jump back in, tell us where you're from. If this story moves you, please subscribe. Tomorrow, I have a special story for you." The dawn's glow had barely faded when Sheriff Gideon Markham rode into the smoking clearing. The scent of charred wood and singed hay clung to the morning air. His horse, a sturdy bay named Justice, snorted as they approached the remains of Delilah Montgomery's barn, collapsed in a heap of embers, and ash. Gideon dismounted swiftly, spurs clinking as he hit the ground. He removed his leather gloves, inhaling slowly to steady his breath. The sight before him was raw, broken beams strewn across blackened earth, a ruined pen where sheep and lambs had lain. Scorched hoof prints led to where Delilah had fought back the Brunner brothers and their men. Doc said to meet him here, Gideon murmured, striding toward the ruined barn. His badge shimmered in the pale light, no longer the professor of philosophy he had been a year prior, but the law for these untamed borders. He paused at the edge of the clearing, hand resting on his Winchester's lever. A soft groan drew his attention. Beneath the worst of the wreckage, a bundle stirred. Gideon kneeled, carefully shifting charred wood aside. There, half buried beneath a collapse, lay Delilah, her white dress streaked with soot and blood. Beside her, the torn body of a lamb wiggled weakly. Gideon's jaw tightened. "Ma'am," he called, voice gentle but urgent. Delilah's eyelids fluttered. Her breathing was shallow, pain etched on her face. Blood seeped from a cut on her forehead. "Help," she whispered. Gideon tucked his Winchester into its scabbard and reached for her arm. The impact of her weight beneath the wreckage had stabilized the exposed joist, but worsened her injury. "Hold still," he ordered softly. He shifted more boards, careful, measured. Each plank he removed risked further collapse, but he persevered. At last he lifted the final beam, and Delilah lumbered free, her legs buckling beneath her. With more effort than he would ever admit in town, Gideon managed to haul her from the rubble. He half-carried her to Justice's flank and settled her in the saddle's gentle curve. "Doc's waiting half a mile south," he said. "Hang on." Justice cantered west, hooves pounding on the scorched earth. Delilah's head lolled back, and Gideon eased the reins, glancing down at her. Her dark eyelashes fluttered, pain giving way to confusion. Who fired?" she rasped. "Me," Gideon said. He spared a glance toward the smoldering ruin. "And you?" In her fevered haze, Delilah managed a nod. Blood seeped through her dress, and Gideon wrapped his coat around her waist, spurring Justice faster. Meanwhile, the Brunner brothers, nursing stitched coats and bruised egos, regrouped at their base camp. Jake's chest heaved with fury. "You shot at her." He snarled at Eli. Eli, one eye swollen shut, snorted. "She had a gun." "You'd have done the same." Jake's hand twitched toward his pistol. "She's just a widow." "Burned her place, what? Did she think would happen?" A low laugh echoed from the shadows. From among the men strode Silas Crow, former Pinkerton turned mercenary. His lined face gave nothing away, but his eyes glinted with dark promise. "Then maybe it's time to teach her a proper lesson." Jake paused, doubt flickering. But Crow's reputation as a ruthless enforcer loomed large. The men rallied behind the larger-than-life figure. Back on the trail, Justice raced through burned stubble toward the makeshift clinic. Gideon's mind raced. Delilah was crucial to the Montgomery claim, and the county needed her farm to feed the fledgling settlement. If she died, at the clinic's ramshackle doors, Doc Emmett Crowley burst out, a satchel in hand. "Mount up," he cried. His face pale under a mop of white hair, Gideon lifted Delilah from the saddle. Crowley slid a whiskey flask to him and gripped his shoulder. No time for pleasantries. Crowley barked, then scooped Delilah into his arms. "Stay with me, Miss Montgomery. I've got what I need." Gideon watched the doctor sprint toward his operating table. The militia's banner, hastily erected under the doctor's windows, rippled in the breeze half-assembled men of silver. Ridge, too late to save the barn, but determined to oppose further atrocities. A rider burst through the door, spurs ringing like warning bells. He saluted Gideon, breathless. "Sheriff, it's worse than we thought. The Brenners have struck again this time at Morris Junction. They set fire to a shipment of winter grain, men killed." Gideon's jaw clenched. He looked toward the smoldering horizon and back at the doctor working on Delilah. "Gather every able man," he said. "We ride for Morris Junction. No more suffering, not on my watch." In that moment, the sun climbed, casting long shadows across the scorched land. Gideon spurred justice into motion, the militia rallying behind him like a wave of resolve. And Delilah, faint but alive, lay in the doctor's hands, unaware that her rescue had lit the spark for a fight that would change Silver Ridge forever. End of Part 2. Cliffhanger. Can Gideon's hastily assembled militia stop the Brenners before they strike again? Dawn cracked open like a slow-spilling wound over the barren stretch outside Dry Hollow. A brittle hush lay across the card room's remnants, the smell of gunpowder still clinging to the floorboards, and the memories of the night clinging even tighter to Ella's mind. She stood at the threshold, one hand resting on the broken swing door, her knuckles raw and her heart so loud she half expected the outlaws still lurking in the shadows to hear it drum. Inside, the tables were overturned, chairs splintered, the money left behind like some godforsaken afterthought. But it wasn't the coin she was worried about. It was the promise she'd made to herself, to her sister who lay buried beyond the dry creek bed, to the whisper of her father's voice she still heard when she checked the cylinders of her Derringer before slipping it into her garter. Her breath hitched as she stepped inside. She gathered the scattered cards, stacking them neat as if that could bring order to chaos. Each ace winked up at her mocking, reminding, "One shot's all it takes." That was her father's line. Trouble was, one shot was never all it took when the world reeked of men like Holloway's boys. A boot scraped behind her. Instinct snapped her spine straight, hand brushing the hidden Derringer at her thigh. She turned slow, eyes narrowing at the lanky figure leaning against the doorframe. He was young, maybe too young for the scars already carved into his cheek. His hat tipped low as if he didn't want her to see how nervous his eyes really were. "Mornin', Miss Ella," he drawled, voice dry as sun-baked bones. "Words out. You handled yourself mighty fine last night. Sheriff says he might even be ridden this way. See about mackin' you official deputized, and all." She barked out a humorless laugh. "Sheriff can keep his tin star." Didn't lift a finger. Last time they came sniffing around. Why the sudden concern now? The boy's Adam's apple bobbed. "Folks talkin'. Holloway's kin won't take kindly to one of theirs getting dropped by a woman holding a pair of twos and a pop gun." Ella's gaze drifted to the bloodstain. Still dark near the bar. She'd see that stain every time she closed her eyes. They always come back. Dogs sniffing their own blood. He shifted, boots scuffing the warped floorboards. "Just wanted you to know. My pa's got a spare mule out back if you aim to lay low a spell." She met his eyes, then really met them. Kind eyes, naive even. The sort this town chewed up and spat out before they ever learned to aim straight. She forced a smile that didn't reach the corners of her mouth. "Appreciate it, Jesse, but I ain't runnin'. I'm done runnin'." Jesse tipped his hat, though his shoulders stayed hunched as if the weight of what he'd just said pressed down on him like the noon sun. "They'll be back, Ella. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but they'll be back." She nodded. "Then let him come." After he left, she knelt by the bar and wiped the stain clean. She moved slow, methodical, like she was scrubbing away the last bit of fear she'd allowed herself to feel. By the time the sun cleared the rooftops, she was ready. She strapped her Derringer tight, checked the cold iron of the revolver hidden beneath the bar, and sat herself down at the last unbroken table. When the next door swung open, she'd be ready. Cards shuffled, eyes clear, and the last echo of her father's voice steady in her ears. "One shot's all it takes," he'd said. She knew better now. It took every shot you had, and then some. Somewhere far off, a crow caught over the dusty horizon, carrying a warning on its ragged wings. Trouble was riding for Dry Hollow, and this time The quiet card dealer would be waiting, Derringer ready, heart steady, and not a single ace left up anyone's sleeve but her own. The wind shifted. Boots crunched gravel outside. Ella breathed in slow, steady, feeling the weight of the Derringer press warm against her thigh. Let him come. Before dawn broke, the militia gathered in the barnyard beneath a sky still gray with the last vestiges of night. Gideon Markham stood at the head of the group, his rifle hoisted over his shoulder. Beside him, Delilah Montgomery climbed into her saddle, the lamb cooing softly in its sling. Men and women settled onto their mounts, blacksmiths, farmers, ranch hands, all whose lives Delilah's courage had touched. They felt it, a resolve stronger than fear. Gideon raised a hand. Remember why we're here. Brenners took innocence. We bring them home. Horses pawed, whinnied. Then, as the first pale rays of sun turned the sky pink, they rode. A chill greeted them in the canyon's mouth. Rock walls loomed like silent sentinels, and vultures wheeled high above. Gideon paused, scouting ahead. Tracks led deeper into the winding gorge, hoofprints mixed with boot flaps, and signs of struggle-torn fabric, dark stains in the dust. Split into two groups, he ordered. Delilah, take the east wall. I'll circle west. She nodded. Be careful. He offered a rare, faint smile. You too. Delilah urged her mount along narrow ledges, the lamb pressed safely against her. Below, she spotted Brenner riders armed and restless, herded behind crude barricades of fallen logs. Women and children sat huddled mourning, shaking, eyes wide. With uncertainty, her pulse hammered. With practiced calm, she checked her Derringer and slid behind a rock outcropping. Gideon's group would draw their fire. She had one chance to slip through and free the hostages. But halfway down the scree, she froze. Below, among Brenner men, stood Sheriff Caldwell, once the upstanding lawman of Silver Ridge, now wearing a guilty grin as he trained his rifle on a trembling child. Shock ripped through Delilah. Caldwell had disappeared 2 months earlier, rumors claiming he'd ridden out in pursuit of rustlers, never returned. Yet here he was, aiding the very scum he once hunted. Her mind whirled. Betrayal, confusion, anger. She steadied her breath. These hostages needed rescue, but the sheriff's presence changed everything. A rifle barked. Men hollered. Gideon's squad surged from the west, drawing Brenner fire in a spray of dust and curses. Delilah melted back, torn between aiding the hostages and confronting Caldwell's treachery. But back up the trail, she heard Gideon's voice. Markham. To all, hold fire until I whistle. She clamped her jaw. No time for doubt. She slid forward. Derringer ready. In an instant, she had his flank. The child gasped, fumbling at their captor's sleeve. Delilah's finger tightened. A soft click, ear-splitting crack. The child bolted free, scrambling toward safety as Delilah pressed another shot smack between a Brenner's shoulder blades. Chaos exploded. Hostages screamed and sprinted. Gideon and his men swarmed in, weapons raised. Brenners fell back, outmatched. Amid the fray, Delilah found Caldwell, face ashen. She trained her Derringer on him. Sheriff. She whispered. His rifle clattered to dust. I had no choice. His eyes flickered with guilt. They threatened to kill my wife. I tried to shield her. Her throat tightened. So you burned 2 farms? He shook his head, tears tracing dirt-smudged cheeks. They forced me. But the militia's roars drowned his pleas. Gideon arrived then, gaze hard. Delilah holstered her Derringer. Round them up, Gideon ordered. All of them. And Caldwell, you're riding back to Silver Ridge under guard. Caldwell bowed his head. Beneath the cleared canyon sky, hostages reunited with tearful relatives. The militia's cheers echoed off stone walls, yet Delilah's gaze remained fixed on the fallen sheriff. Justice, she realized, was rarely simple. As the sun climbed, she grasped the reins. "Let's go home," she said. But in the folds of the canyon, two pairs of eyes watched from a hidden alcove, Silas Crow, and someone even darker marking the end of one betrayal and the beginning of another. Next, the hidden traitor's identity will shatter alliances, and Delilah must wrestle with a deeper conspiracy where the greatest threat lies not in the Brenners, but within the law itself. The wagon wheels rattled against the rocky trail as Silver Ridge's militia transported the freed families back to town. Delilah sat astride the lead wagon's seat, Lamb nestled against her side, her gaze scanning the horizon where the Brenner gang still lurked beyond the valley rim. Her mind replayed the canyon's betrayals, Sheriff Caldwell's fall, Gideon's steadfast resolve, and the hidden eyes of Silas Crow. Each memory lurked like an ember beneath her ribs, threatening to ignite a blaze of vengeance. They crested a ridge at midday, the sun carving shadows between brittle pines. Ahead lay a scorched field, the Brenners' new hideout, tents arrayed around a blackened fire pit, horses tethered to posts as men lounged near barrels of stolen whiskey. The militia dismounted, rifles at the ready. Gideon motioned. "We circle. Wide, draw them out." Delilah dismounted, boots crunching over sun-baked stones. She drew her derringer, a calm ritual, and stepped into the open field. Smoke curled around half-buried crates, and the Brenners looked up, laughter dying on 6 scarred faces. "Back so soon?" Jake Brenner called, hefting a rifle. Delilah squared her shoulders. "This ends today." Jake spat. "We'll see whose resolve breaks first." He signaled, and men rose, guns leveled. A tense standoff stretched on until Gideon's whistle split the air. Chaos erupted. Bullets tore through canvas and splintered wood. Delilah dove behind a barrel, returning fire with uncanny precision. Around her, the militia advanced, disciplined and determined. In the crossfire, Silas Crow slipped away, slipping behind the Brenner lines. Delilah noticed him too late. She pivoted, derringer poised, only to see him vanish behind a ruined granary. Moments later, a single shot rang out, crowd's laughter cut short. Delilah's heart lurched as she raced toward the granary's corpse-strewn entrance. Inside lay Silas Crow, bullet wound in his side, his eyes wide with betrayal. "Why?" he rasped, blood bubbling at his lips. Delilah knelt beside him. "Why work with them?" He coughed. "There's more. Behind Silver Ridge. Powerful men who profit from chaos. The Brenners are just pawns." Delilah's mind spun. This was no longer about barn burning or stolen grain. It was a conspiracy reaching to the town's highest offices. "Don't." Silas's voice faltered. "They'll come ... for you next." She gripped his hand, but his eyes flickered shut. His last breath fogged the air. Outside, Gideon called. She rose, resolve steeling her spine. The militia had subdued the Brenners. Ropes bit into frantic wrists. With Silas's dying words echoing, she faced Jake Brenner. "This ends," she repeated, voice cold. "But a greater war begins." Jake's grin faltered. "You're just a woman with a gun." She leveled her derringer at his chest. "And a promise to keep." The Brenners trembled in their bonds as Delilah turned away, mind already racing through Silas's warning. She climbed back into the wagon. Gideon followed Dot as they rode toward Silver Ridge. The midday sun cast their long shadows before them, a pregnant widow with vengeance in her eyes, and a sheriff whose war was just beginning. This story took us a long time. If you like it, subscribe. Now back to the story. The distant ridge held more than smoke and silhouettes. It held the pulse of a hidden enemy and a secret that would shatter the fragile piece of silver. Ridge. Next, dark alliances form behind closed doors, and Delilah must navigate a world where the law itself cannot be trusted. Night fell over Silver Ridge like a velvet shroud, broken only by the lamplight spilling from the newly repaired sheriff's office. Inside, Gideon Markham pored over grainy ledgers and cattle manifests stolen from the Brunner camp. The dim glow revealed a tapestry of deceit, forged signatures, bribe receipts, and coded entries pointing to a clandestine syndicate financing the gang's atrocities. Delilah Montgomery stood by the window, the lamb nestled by her side. Fatigue tugged at her bones, but her eyes were relentless, scanning the dark streets where shadows moved with hidden purpose. She stepped into the sheriff's office, placing a rough hand on Gideon's shoulder. "Then it's true," she breathed. "The law is damned." Gideon's eyes met hers, grave and unwavering. "They profit from every barn we rebuild, every family we rescue. They want Silver Ridge broken." Her jaw clenched. "Then we rebuild stronger." He nodded slowly. "But we need proof, something undeniable to show the council." Outside, hoofbeats heralded a newcomer. The doors crashed open, revealing Jonas Wilkes, blood-streaked and weary. Delilah's breath caught. It had been weeks since they'd assumed his fate at Morris Junction. "Jonas!" she exclaimed, rushing forward. His face was drawn. "I escaped. They held me, demanded I lead them to you." Shock rippled through. "Delilah, but why spare you?" Jonas swallowed, gaze flicking to Gideon's ledgers. "They know you're no ordinary widow. You've got friends. They needed leverage." Gideon rose, hands trembling. "We need to expose the council," Jonas nodded. "There's one place, Deputy Carter's cabin by Whisper Creek. He kept copies of all council minutes." Delilah exchanged a look with Gideon. "Then we go tonight." They saddled up beneath a moonlit sky, forging through silent streets. Delilah's heart pounded. Every creak of a board, every clink of gear, spelled betrayal. Still, she pressed forward, driven by the promise of justice. At Carter's cabin, they dismounted. The moon glinted on broken windows. Coarse laughter drifted from within. Gideon's grip tightened. They slipped inside. Papers lay scattered. Firelight danced across maps and minutes detailing illicit payments to the Brunner gang. The cabins. Single lantern cast long twisted shadows. Suddenly, voices, two men entering. Delilah pressed Jonas behind a crate. Gideon melted into the dark. "You got them?" a voice rasped. Someone who oozed power. "Don't worry," another replied, chemical tang of whiskey on his breath. "Once the sheriff confirms, this town's ours." Delilah's stomach churned. They were here. Gideon clenched his fists. The first man barked a laugh and turned, footsteps echoing. Gideon drew his revolver. The shot was thunderous. The power broker crumpled, blood blooming on his coat. His companion wheeled, eyes wide. But Gideon's second shot silenced him. Delilah stepped forward, paper trembling in her hand. "Silver Ridge belongs to no one but its people." The files rustled. She gathered them, Jonas helping. As they fled into the night, Gideon smashed the lantern, plunging the cabin into darkness. They rode back at dawn, proof in hand. The council chamber bristled with tension as Delilah laid the minutes on the table, the weight of truth undeniable. Gasps rose. Councilman paled at her side. Gideon's steady presence spoke volumes. Delilah's voice rang clear. "This town is ours to protect. They'll answer for their crimes." And as the chamber emptied in shock and resolve, Delilah realized that she no longer fought alone. Silver Ridge had found its pulse again, beating in unison for justice. Next, the council's betrayal sparks an election of law and order. As Delilah's enemies scrambled to stay in power, she must choose her allies wisely. The hot midday sun bore down on Silver Ridge as Delilah Montgomery strode through the town square, the stolen council minutes clutched like a blade at her side. Townsfolk paused in their chores, painting fences, hauling water, tending children to watch the triumphant widow who defied both outlaws and crooked officials. But victory was only the first step. The newly convened emergency council meeting bristled with tension. Council President Horace Green sat at the head of the long oak table, his face ashen. Beside him, the remaining aldermen shuffled papers, sweat glistening on their brows. Delilah took the floor, her gaze sweeping the room. "We have proof of your complicity in arming the Brenner gang. You sought to profit from our suffering." Alderman Rose Cooper rose, hand trembling. "Mrs. Montgomery, there must be a mistake." Delilah's voice sharpened. Minutes from Deputy Carter's cabin state otherwise. Payments laundered through county accounts, signatures forged. Will you continue denying your crimes, or will you step aside and let Silver Ridge choose honest leadership? A hush fell over the chamber. Then President Green's jaw set. "Then let us vote." Outside, Gideon Markham kept watch. He leaned against the sheriff's office porch, hand resting on his holstered pistol. The lamplights of the council chamber flickered through the window. A silent standoff in progress. Inside, Alderman cast votes, the clerk's quill scratching the cross parchment. Delilah's heart pounded, eyes locked on President Green. At last the clerk's voice rang out. "Count is unanimous. The council is dissolved until new elections can be held." Applause erupted. Delilah closed her eyes, relief washing over her. But President Green held up a hand. The room stilled. "I will nominate Mrs. Montgomery as interim mayor," he announced, surprise and restraint in his tone. Delilah's breath caught. She shared a look with Gideon, whose nod reached her even through the window. "I accept," she said, voice steady. "But only if every man and woman here pledges to rebuild in honesty and unity." Fresh cheers greeted her words. Outside, Gideon climbed the steps, removing his hat in salute. That evening, Delilah stood on the porch of the newly repainted Montgomery homestead, the sun setting in glorious streaks of red and gold. Gideon joined her, handing her a cup of coffee. "Interim mayor," he teased. She smiled tiredly. "Sounds stranger than outlaw's widow." He leaned close. "You wear it well." Thunder rumbled far off, unseasonal, ominous. Delilah's gaze sharpened as she noticed dark clouds on the horizon. She sipped coffee, heart constricting. "The storm," she said softly. Gideon followed her gaze. "Not weather." She swallowed. Silas warned that others benefit from chaos. The council was just one ring in a larger conspiracy. He nodded, face grave. "And now, as mayor, you'll decide how to hunt the rest." Her eyes glinted with determination. "Then let's not wait." As distant lightning flashed, the two stood side by side, ready to face the gathering storm and the darker forces behind it. Next, Delilah's first act as interim mayor will pit her against newfound enemies within the town who'll stop at nothing to keep their secrets hidden. Morning broke on Silver Ridge with a deceptive calm. Under Delilah Montgomery's new authority as interim mayor, the town stirred with cautious hope. Workers repaired boardwalks, hung fresh shutters, and planted seeds where the Brenners had raised fields. But shadows moved among the crowd-quiet eyes watching, whispers drifting like poison on the wind. Delilah convened a council of townsfolk in the meeting hall, a sturdy, sunlit room where she now presided. Gideon Markham stood at her right, a silent guardian in his badge and dust-streaked coat. At the table sat leaders from every profession: farmers, teachers, shopkeepers, and Doc Crowley, whose steady hand had saved both Delilah and Marshall Mallister. She opened the ledger. "We have 3 mandates. 1. Root out the syndicate members in our midst. 2. Ensure security for every homestead. 3. Rebuild our farms and feed our families." Murmurs of agreement. Then Alderman Cooper cleared her throat. "Mrs. Montgomery, some of us have canals to repair, crops to sow. But what of the council's backers, those we can't see? How do we protect ourselves from the darkness beyond our borders?" Delilah met her gaze. "We start by empowering every citizen. I'm forming a night watch volunteers armed and trained to patrol the perimeter, not to hunt mines, but to protect lives." A wave of nods, she continued, "and we need information. I've placed bounty posters offering pardons to any insider." Who brings the syndicate's proof? The hall buzzed. Gideon's hand rested on Delilah's silent reassurance. That night, lanterns flickered across Silver Ridge as men and women took their posts in the night watch. Delilah rode along the boardwalk with Gideon, the cool air rattling their coats. They paused at the town's edge, where fields met ridge. The only sound was the rustle of wheat. Scary, she admitted. He offered a half smile. Worth it. A distant hiss caught her attention, a lantern moving among the shadows. She nudged her horse forward, Gideon close behind, dot by the old well. Two hooded figures exchanged papers. One stepped back, hood slipping to reveal the sharp features of Sheriff Caldwell, released from custody under Delilah's pardon offer. Your proof? He hissed. The other, a woman in council clerk's guise, handed him a sealed envelope. He tucked it inside his coat. His other hand hovered near his holster. Delilah's breath caught. Internal betrayal at the highest level. She tapped Caldwell's shoulder. His head jerked. Lantern light revealed panic. Mayor Montgomery, he stammered. Caught, she said softly. Gideon blocked the other figure's retreat. The council clerk pressed a pistol to Caldwell's back. We trusted you. Delilah pulled her pistol. It's over. Hand over the documents. Caldwell's shoulders slumped. He extracted the envelope and dropped it to the ground. The clerk lowered her gun, face twisted in betrayal. Well done, Mayor, Caldwell muttered. Without evidence, she knelt, opening the envelope by lantern glow. Deeds to land purchases, secret bank transfers, and the names of council members who'd pocketed Brenner loot. Enough to bring every crooked soul here to justice, Delilah declared. The clerk glared. You think that stops them? They'll run you out. Delilah rose. They'll have to catch me first. A gust of wind extinguished lanterns. In the pitch dark, Delilah's silhouette stood unwavering. Next, with proof secured, Delilah must convene a new election with honest candidates. Yet the syndicate strikes back, and the night watch faces its first true test. The first rays of morning kissed Silver Ridge's rooflines when Delilah Montgomery swung down from her horse in front of the town schoolhouse. A crowd had already gathered, families clutching belongings, smoke wafting from shattered windows, gutted desks and blackboards scorched by late-night arson. The night watch stood in solemn rows along the boardwalk, faces drawn and resolute beneath lanterns that still flickered in the dawn. Delilah stepped onto the porch, lamb tucked in her shawl, and surveyed the damage. Teachers' desks lay askew, books charred beyond recognition. Children huddled in their mothers' arms, eyes wide, uncomprehending. From the edge of the crowd, Marshal Mallister pushed forward, cane tapping broken glass. He knelt beside a stunned schoolboy, brushing soot from the child's cap. You okay, son? He asked, voice gentle. The boy nodded, tears drying on his dusty cheeks. Delilah raised her hand. The night watch fell silent. Her voice rang clear, carrying both compassion and steel. Last night, criminals tried to snuff out our future by burning our school. They thought this would break our spirit. It has only strengthened our resolve. A cheer rose. She continued, tonight we will hold our first open forum for interim elections. Every eligible man and woman may stand, speak, and be heard. Let this schoolhouse, once a target of terror, stand now as the birthplace of our democracy. The crowd erupted. Gideon Markham stepped beside her and returned her nod. By midday, women and farmers, blacksmiths and clerks filed into the meeting hall to declare their candidacies. Delilah oversaw the proceedings with impartial grace. Each speaker recounted a vision for Silver Ridge's renewal, irrigation ditches to feed parched fields, a volunteer fire brigade to defend against further attacks, and a citizen patrol to root out the syndicate's last operatives. When the ballots were drawn at dusk, the votes were counted by lantern light under Delilah's watchful eye. The winners, 2 aldermen, a female school trustee, and a newly elected marshal pledged their fealty to honest governance. Delilah herself would remain interim mayor until the new council convened in 10 days. But as the festivities spilled into the star-spangled night, a new threat stirred beyond the ridge. Delilah returned to the sheriff's office where Gideon and Doc Crowley pored over maps and reports. Jonas Wilkes stood nearby, his eyes haunted. "They struck again," Gideon said, voice edged with dread. "The granary at Cedar Creek swollen. River but new fires set along its banks, crops lost." Delilah closed her eyes. Each act of terror had escalated since she'd first set foot on this land. Barn burned, hostages taken, school torched, and now the granary, all signs of a relentless campaign against the town's heart and harvest. She opened her eyes and stepped to the window. The moon glowed behind drifting clouds. "It's not just about power anymore," she murmured. "It's a total war on our way of life." Doc Crowley raised a hand. "The worst of it? These patterns match Grenfall's Rangers, an outlaw band rumored all but extinct." Jonas's face turned ashen. "They worked for the Syndicate years ago. If they've reformed then," Gideon's jaw clenched, "they're the next wave." Delilah rested a hand on her lamb's head. It shivered. The peace she'd fought to secure was fragile and slipping. "The Night Watch held the line tonight," she said, turning back to them. "At first light, we'll ride to Cedar Creek, secure the granary, and stand our ground. This town may be small, but its spirit is fierce. They'll find no easy prey here." Gideon nodded. He stepped close, lowering his voice. "But if Grenfall's Rangers have returned, payback will be deadlier than any Brenner." Delilah's eyes burned. "Then we'll show them why Silver Ridge cannot be broken." Outside, the wind carried the scent of distant smoke. In the lamplit stillness, Delilah Montgomery, interim mayor and mother to a land that symbolized her hope, steeled herself for the coming storm. The harvest, the school, and the very soul of her town would not go quietly into the night. The dawn ride to Cedar Creek would mark the next chapter in Silver Ridge's legend, a chapter they would write with courage, unity, and an unwavering stand for justice. Next, as Delilah and her allies confront the resurrected outlaw band, alliances will be tested, and the true mastermind behind the Syndicate may at last reveal himself. Dawn cracked over Silver Ridge like the first stroke of a match, igniting hope and fear in equal measure. Delilah rode at the front of the column, her lamb bundled against her chest. Beside her, Gideon, Jonas, and Doc Crowley kept a steady pace. The Night Watch fanned out behind them like a river of iron flowing toward Cedar Creek. They reached the granary by mid-morning. The structure was still smoldering, timbers blackened, the scent of scorched wheat hanging thick in the air. Local farmers, sleeves rolled up, worked in desperate teams to salvage what they could. Delilah dismounted, boots crunching in the ashy mud. She knelt and scooped a handful of charred grain, letting it trickle through her fingers. "Another mouthful gone," she murmured. Doc Jonas hovered nearby. "There's more than fire here," he said, pointing to tracks, boot prints, and horse hooves crossing the riverbank. "Grenfall's Rangers don't just burn. They raid, they steal." Gideon cursed under his breath. "This was coordinated. They're starving us into submission." Delilah stood, eyes scanning the horizon. Far off, a line of riders emerged from the tree line, shadows moving in lockstep. She felt the prickle at the base of her neck, instinct that danger rode with them. She raised her hand. The Night Watch formed a defensive circle around the farmers. Jonas readied his rifle, and Doc Crowley tugged a shotgun from his saddlebag. The riders approached, revealing faces half hidden by kerchiefs and battered hats. Grenfall's Rangers reborn from the ashes. Their leader, tall man with a jagged scar running from temple to chin, stopped his horse a stone's throw away. He raised an open palm, feigning parley. Delilah stepped forward, voice calm but carrying across the wind. "You're trespassing on Silver Ridge land. Turn back while you can." The scarred man laughed, showing yellowed teeth. "This land's ripe for the taking, Widow Montgomery." No walls, no army, just soft folk and burned barns. A cold fury settled into Delilah's chest. She drew her revolver, but held it low. You'll find out just how soft we are when you try to take what's left. His eyes narrowed. You can't stop us all. Gideon stepped up, his own weapon drawn. But we can start with you. The air between the two groups crackled with tension. A single misstep, a stray shout, and the fragile standoff would explode into gunfire. Suddenly, a distant rifle shot split the morning. One of the rangers lurched sideways and fell from his horse, blood blooming on his coat. Confusion erupted. Horses reared, men shouted. From the bluff above the granary, hidden sharpshooters revealed themselves. Night watch marksmen who'd flanked the outlaws under cover of dawn. Delilah raised her voice over the chaos. Drop your guns, walk away now, or join him in the dirt. The scarred leader glared at her, hate flickering in his eyes. But with his men exposed and outgunned, he spat in the mud and tugged his reins. One by one, Grunfall's rangers backed away, retreating into the tree line. Curses trailing behind them. As silence settled, Delilah exhaled. She turned to her people. We hold the granary. We hold the harvest. No more raids without a price. But in the shadows of the pines, the rangers regrouped. Farther back, beyond even their circle, a solitary figure watched from horseback, unmistakable in his long black coat, face hidden under a wide-brim hat. The true architect, the master behind the syndicate's bloodshed, sat motionless, eyes fixed on Delilah and her defiant band. His gloved hand tightened on the reins. The battle for Erkan, Delilah and her defiant band. Silver Ridge had only just begun. Night draped over Silver Ridge like a mournful cloak, broken only by the watchfires crackling around the granary. Delilah Montgomery stood on its charred steps, the lamb asleep in her shawl, as Gideon Markham and the night watch huddled nearby, sharing coffee thick with dirt and determination. Jonas Wilkes approached, signal lantern in hand. His face was pale. Mayor, tracks lead south toward the old mining road. They've split into smaller bands. Delilah frowned. They're trying to disperse us, make us chase shadows. Instead, we strike where it hurts. Gideon's eyes shone phosphorescent in the firelight. They're hidden cache by Dead Man's Gulch, weapons, supplies they can't pillage without it. She nodded. At first light, we ride together, militia in full, night watch sharpshooters flanking. The air thrummed with silent resolve. As dawn bled into the sky, horses' hooves drummed through the empty streets. Delilah led the charge, lamb secured, both shields and battle standard. The column snaked toward Dead Man's Gulch, a wasteland of old workings and collapsed shafts, perfect for ambush. They arrived at the gulch's mouth by mid-morning. Gill-smear walls crumbled, and rusted timbers lay strewn. Gideon signaled the first wave to approach the main track. Sharpshooters took positions atop a low ridge. Delilah moved closer to the entrance of a collapsed shaft. The acrid stench of oil and tobacco drifted on a breeze. She raised her pistol. Jonas and Doc flanked her, knives gleaming. From the darkness inside, muffled voices. The syndicate's outlaws, Grunfall's rearguard, argued about the stolen spoils. Quiet, Delilah whispered. She raised her hand, and the militia fell silent like a tide pulled from shore. At her signal, Gideon's group surged. A rifle cracked, sand powdered at Delilah's feet. She kicked loose an old plank, stumbling into the dark corridor. Light from her lantern flickered over crates of rifles, barrels of gunpowder, bags of grain and arsenal. A flash of movement, a gun pulled from shadows. Delilah reacted without thought. Her derringer barked twice, hitting the outlaw's hand. He howled. Dropping the weapon. Jonas kicked the crate open. Doc Crowley swung his shotgun. The corridor became a furnace of violent screams, and the thunder of rifles exchanged an echo. Above, sharpshooters kept back the ridge band. Below, Delilah fought with single-minded precision. She saw the syndicate lieutenant, a slender man with hawk's eyes, raise his pistol. She lunged, colliding with him. The lantern shattered, plunging them into darkness. Her heart pounded as she grappled. Feeling his leather coat, the cold steel of his gun butt, she twisted free. Something caught underfoot. A plank snapped, and they both fell. In the dim light, leaking through a crack, she saw his face, smirking, confident and utterly contemptuous. He lunged, glancing at her lamb strap behind her. Rage exploded in her chest. "Leave him out of this," she screamed. The lieutenant hesitated, his first error. Delilah's fist caught him flush on the jaw. He staggered. She pressed her derringer to his temple. "Tell your boss. This is our home," she rasped. He spat. "You're nothing but a woman." She squeezed the trigger. The shot rang deafening in the tunnel, ricocheting off stone. The lieutenant crumpled, a bloom of red on his temple. Silence fell. The gunpowder smoke cleared to reveal Delilah's silhouette, lamb trembling against her chest, standing over the defeated man. Above, Gideon's whistle pierced the surface. The remaining outlaws dropped their weapons, sobered by the sharp crack. Moments later, the militia flooded the shaft, guns leveled, eyes wide. Delilah dropped to one knee, cradling her lamb. "Pack everything," she ordered softly. "Tonight, we starve the beast." As they loaded crates onto wagons, the syndicate's grip on Silver Ridge shrank. But in the shifting shadows of the gulch, a distant laugh echoed, a low, mocking sound that promised the true mastermind was watching and learning. Next, with the cash seized, Delilah faces the final showdown, tracking the syndicate's leader to the moonlit mesa where the war for Silver Ridge's soul will be decided. Moonlight poured across the mesa like silver water as Delilah Montgomery led her small posse to the summit. The wind carried a whisper promise of truth and final reckoning. Below, the plain spread wide, dotted with lanterns marking the remnants of Gideon's night watch, preparing the town for safe return. At the mesa's edge stood the syndicate's final stronghold, a horseshoe of ancient stone pillars, rumored to be remnants of a forgotten tribe. In their shadow, the syndicate's leader, long-coated figure on horseback, awaited, flanked by the last of Grenfall's rangers, battered but fierce. Delilah dismounted, lamb secured. Gideon and her militia formed a semicircle behind her, guns glinting in pale light. Doc Crowley carried Jonas's rifle, a silent testament to all who'd fallen and survived. The leader's hat brim hid his face. He tipped his head, salute or challenge. Delilah could not tell. "You have guts to come here," he said, voice silk over steel. "And I have justice," Delilah replied. He laughed, a low sound. "Justice? You think you've beaten me? You took my pawns, now you face the king." Gideon's hand drifted near his holster. Delilah laid a restraining hand on his arm. "Spare words," she said. "Let's end it." The leader raised his pistol. In a swift arc, Gideon's shot cracked off a nearby pillar, splintering stone at the leader's shoulder. He flinched, then leveled his gun at Delilah. "You're fast." "So are you," she returned. She drew her derringer, 2 sharp clicks. In the night, lightning flickered, revealing the glint of a gloved hand clenching a locket. Delilah's eyes narrowed, a woman's face inside. "Sarah," she whispered. His jaw tightened. "She was my sister." Pain flickered across Delilah's face. "Then you know what loss brings." His gun shook. Behind him, rangers pressed. Tight, indecision breaking their ranks. Doc Crowley stepped forward, voice calm. "Shed your gun, and you'll find mercy." The leader spat. "Mercy is weakness." He squeezed the trigger. Delilah's derringer barked twice. The hat brim flew back, revealing scarred features and gray in his dark hair. Both shots crumbled as pistolets from his grip, but he raised his second gun, hidden a shining wolf's tooth on the handle. Time slowed. Gideon lunged. Doc leapt, militia converged. Delilah sprinted, heart thundering. He fired. She dove behind a pillar as the gun cracked bone. Jonas tackled an outlaw sliding in from the flank. As the militia subdued rangers, Gideon's victory shot rang out, catching the leader's ski. Blurred. The echo carried across the mesa. Delilah rose, breath ragged. The leader sank to one knee, his gun arm trembling. He dropped the Wolf-handle pistol, a hush falling. Delilah advanced. "It ends tonight." He closed his eyes. "She believed in you." He touched the locket. "I made her a promise too. Protect this land, but I was too blind to see the rot beneath." Tears glistened. She recognized the locket. Sarah, her sister's face smiling. Years younger. "You were never my sister," she said, voice breaking. He nodded, voice soft. "No, but I saw her kindness, her strength. She taught me what it meant to care. After she died. Pain and regret etched his voice. "I lost my way." Delilah's grip tightened on her pistol. "You brought death and ashes here." He bowed his head. "I'll answer for it. Whatever justice demands." Gideon approached, cuffs ready. The militia gathered, guns lowered, but eyes unforgiving. Delilah holstered her derringer and stepped back. No more blood. The leader rose, shoulders sagging. "Do what you must." Delilah nodded to Gideon. He cuffed the man. Around them, Silver Ridge's defenders exhaled, the war finally over. Lightning split the sky as if heralding the dawn of a new era. Delilah gazed out over the land she'd saved, the farms, the schoolhouse, the granary. In her arms the lamb stirred, bleating softly. She whispered, "Welcome home." Far below, Silver Ridge stirred. Families emerged from homes, survivors, reunited under lamplit streets. Hope took root again, growing stronger than any fear, and under the stone pillars of the mesa, the locket glinted in thunderlight, a reminder of the love that sparked a widow's crusade and reshaped a town. With dawn's rosy fingers brushing the mesa's edge, Delilah Montgomery watched as the syndicate's leader, once the shadow at Silver Ridge's heart, was led away, under Gideon Markham's stern guard. The lamplit streets below gleamed with new dawn, the town's pulse quickening with relief. Yet for Delilah, the real work was only beginning. She tied the lamb's sling tighter and turned to the militia, and night watch gathered around her. "Today," she said, voice echoing against stone, "we rebuild not just structures but trust. We will restore our farms, our school, our spirit together." A cheer rose. Gideon saluted, and even the captured leader, carried past in rough-hewn cuffs, managed a weak nod. The morning sun gilded the columns as Delilah descended the mesa. Lamb in her arms, a town's cheer ringing behind her. By midday, Silver Ridge was alive with activity. Neighbors formed teams to repair the school's roof. Doc Crowley performed last-minute checks on the militia's wounded. Jonas taught sharpshooting to eager young volunteers. And under Delilah's watchful eye, new crops were planted in earth, turned fertile by hope. Even the former council clerk, but she's irrelevant now outside the blacksmith's forge. Sparks danced as metal met steel. Old Henderson hammered a horseshoe, heart bound to Delilah's cause. She paused. "Your forge is open?" she asked. "Always," he replied. Blacksmith's grin beneath soot. "Got some plow blades that need straightening." She handed him a ledger. "Use this. Every hour in your shop logged. Every cent accounted. We rebuild with honesty." He nodded, eyes bright with gratitude. "Orders, ma'am." Evening brought a quiet lull. Delilah returned to her porch, lamb nestled at her feet. She stared at the horizon dripping dusk. Gideon joined her, offering coffee in tin cups. "You did it," he said softly. She shook her head. "We did it." He paused, studying her profile. "What now, Mayor Montgomery?" She sipped the bitter brew. "Now we heal, and we remember." Gideon's brow lifted. "Remember what?" She placed a hand on her belly, feeling the lamb's gentle bleat. "Every scar, every sacrifice. So we never let darkness take root again." He reached across the porch rail, fingers brushing hers. "And I'll be here, every step." She turned, finding not just a sheriff but a partner in the fight. Moonlight glinted on the barn where once her farm stood, reborn under the town's care. Outside, Silver Ridge's night vigil burned bright, a beacon of defiance against shadows. Families gathered, hands joined, lanterns held high, singing hymns of gratitude and courage. And in the hush before midnight, Delilah Montgomery whispered a promise. "I will protect this land as long as this land needs me." The wind carried her vow across fields and valleys, sealing the legend of a widow who refused to be driven from her home, and who taught a town that unity, honesty, and unwavering heart could conquer any darkness. End of part 13. Next, 2 more. Great stories are next. Don't miss them. Subscribe and turn on notifications. Dawn's first light filtered through the windows of the rebuilt schoolhouse as Delilah Montgomery entered, lamb in tow. The once charred desks now gleamed with fresh paint. The chalkboard bore a new lesson: courage, community, and compassion. Children filed inside, chattering with the excitement of returning to learning. Delilah paused at the doorway, her heart swelling at the sight of young faces eager to absorb knowledge. Jonas Wilkes stood at the front, smoothing a stack of books. "Mayor Montgomery," he greeted, voice warm. "Our first lesson's about gratitude." She smiled, seating herself at a desk chosen at random. A small hand offered her a slate tablet etched with a single word: hope. As the children repeated the word in unison, Delilah felt the weight of every trial she'd endured soften. Across town, Gideon Markham oversaw the clearing of the burnt granary's ashes, farmers working side by side, laughter threading through the air. By midday, Delilah convened a gathering at the town square. She stood on a makeshift stage, lamb resting at her feet, militia standing guard in respectful silence. "Today, we celebrate the first harvest since the cleansing," she announced. Behind her, wagons bore sacks of wheat, corn, and beans, a testament to the land's resilience. The crowd erupted in cheers as music drifted from the saloon, reopened and bustling once more. Children danced, neighbors embraced, and tables groaned under fresh-baked loaves and roasted game. Yet amidst the jubilation, Delilah's gaze drifted to distant mesa. 12 stones still stood, silent witnesses to the night the war had ended. She placed a hand over her heart. "We must honor those who gave their lives so we could stand here," she said softly. She signaled, and Hun Gideon joined her at the stage. Together, they led a moment of silence, heads bowed as wind whispered through the columns. When the hush broke, Doc Crowley raised a lantern. "To the fallen may their sacrifice guide our future." Glasses clinked, voices toasted. The festival resumed under a sky brushed with dusk. Delilah mingled, offering thanks and gathering stories of bravery. As night enveloped the square, lanterns lit a path to the rebuilt barn, now a community hall. Inside, she discovered Henderson forging a small plaque. Here, unity stood its ground. She laid a hand on the polished wood. "Thank you." He nodded, "for giving us a chance." Outside, the security gates remained open, the night watch patrolling with pride rather than fear. Delilah watched from the barn's threshold, lamb at her side, the echoes of laughter warming her. A faint ripple in the wind carried distant hoofbeats. No threat, but a reminder that the frontier spirit never truly sleeps. Delilah cradled the lamb, whispering, "Rest well, little one. We'll face whatever comes together." Beyond Silver Ridge, 2 more stories waited ready to unfold beneath the same resilient sky. The sun dipped low over Silver Ridge, casting long golden rays across the rolling fields. Delilah Montgomery rode out on horseback, lamb nestled safely in a satchel, to inspect the newly repaired fence lines on the eastern pastures. The air smelled of fresh hay and wild sage, a striking contrast to the smoke she'd once known. As she rounded a bend, She spotted Doc Crowley kneeled beside an overturned wagon, his hands busy as he treated a grazing horse's injured leg. "Morning, Mayor," he greeted, straightening. "Got a flat and some cuts from that ambush last week." Delilah dismounted. "Are you all right?" Doc waved a hand. "Barely. Thank you for the swift rescue." She smiled. "That's what neighbors do." Suddenly, distant shouts echoed from the homestead. Delilah's heart seized. She galloped back, her spurs jingling like alarm bells. She burst into the yard where Gideon Markham coordinated unloading of lumber from a supply wagon. Families busied themselves rebuilding a neighbor's fence destroyed by spring floods. "Sheriff, what's happened?" she cried. He pointed toward the barn's loft. "Carts overturned. Someone's taken the feed for the cattle." Delilah's brow furrowed. The ration stores were meant to sustain them until the next harvest. Sabotage cut deeply. "Find tracks," she ordered. "Jonas with me." They followed hoof prints and scuffed earth into the woodland near the creek. Sunlight filtered through budding leaves as they traced the path uphill. The trail and the sun dipped low over Silver Ridge, casting long golden rays across the rolling fields. Delilah Montgomery rode out on horseback, lamb nestled safely in a satchel, to inspect the newly repaired fence lines on the eastern pastures. The air smelled of fresh hay and wild sage, a striking contrast to the smoke she'd once known. As she rounded a bend, she spotted Doc Crowley kneeled beside an overturned wagon, his hands busy as he treated a grazing horse's injured leg. "Morning, Mayor," he greeted, straightening. "Got a flat and some cuts from that ambush last week." Delilah dismounted. "Are you all right?" Doc waved a hand. "Barely. Thank you for the swift rescue." She smiled. "That's what neighbors do." Suddenly, distant shouts echoed from the homestead. Delilah's heart seized. She galloped back, her spurs jingling like alarm bells. She burst into the yard where Gideon Markham coordinated unloading of lumber from a supply wagon. Families busied themselves rebuilding a neighbor's fence destroyed by spring floods. "Sheriff, what's happened?" she cried. He pointed toward the barn's loft. "Carts overturned. Someone's taken the feed for the cattle." Delilah's brow furrowed. The ration stores were meant to sustain them until the next harvest. Sabotage cut deeply. "Find tracks," she ordered. "Jonas with me." They followed hoof prints and scuffed earth into the woodland near the creek. Sunlight filtered through budding leaves as they traced the path uphill. The trail ended at a small campsite, still smoldering embers and extinguished lanterns. Broadswords of wheat lay scattered, feed sacks torn open. Delilah's jaw clenched. Her gaze swept the thicket. Then she saw it. Footprints in the mud boot. Treads narrower than a ranger's. She knelt, pressing fingers to the print. "Not Grenfall's," she murmured. "Too small." Jonas examined a discarded handkerchief, blood-stained. "Caldwell's?" Delilah stiffened. Memories of the former sheriff's betrayal flashed: his coerced service to the Brenners, his redemption under her pardon. She reached for the locket he'd worn. Her breath caught. It was missing. A twig snapped. They whirled, pistols drawn. From the bush stepped two figures, Councilman Blake Edwards and Rose Cooper, faces rigid with guilt. "Mayor Montgomery," Blake began, voice trembling. The morning air rang with the clamor of hammers and saws as Silver Ridge prepared for the grand opening of the community hall in Delilah Montgomery's rebuilt barn. Banners flew on every lamppost, and children ran about laying flower petals along the boardwalk. For the first time in months, the town felt unshakably alive. Delilah stepped onto the lifted porch, lamb nestled in her shawl, to a standing ovation. Gideon Markham stood at attention beside her, the new marshal's badge shining on his vest. "Today," Delilah proclaimed, "we reclaim not just a building, but our unity. This hall will host town meetings, celebrations, and the stories of our shared struggle. Let no darkness ever return to its walls." With that, Gideon cut the ribbon. The crowd surged inside, filling every corner of the warm, lantern-lit space. Music filled the rafters as old Henderson struck up the fiddle. As mingling began, Delilah and Gideon found a quiet corner. The lamb rumbled in its sleep. She sipped cider. "Feels right." He nodded. "You've led them through fire and flood." Her gaze drifted to the far corner where Rose Cooper and Blake Edwards readied. Signs of restitution, handing toolkits to farmers they'd wronged. Restoring trust. She murmured. Behind them, the new council assembled for their first meeting. Led by the female school trustee, Harriet Fields, a visionary whose heartfelt speech had earned her the position. Delilah listened as Harriet opened the floor. First order, permanent night watch charter. Second, funded fire brigade. Third, agricultural cooperative to support farmers. Cheering erupted. Delilah exhaled relief. That night, the town gathered in the square for the annual harvest festival, late but celebratory. Tables bowed under fresh produce. Lanterns bobbed like stars come to earth. Delilah raised a cup. To Silver Ridge may our courage be constant, our unity unwavering. Glasses clinked, laughter rose. As the festivities continued, Gideon spotted Jonas approaching, face serious. "Mayor Doc found something," he said quietly. Delilah excused herself, following Jonas to the community hall's storeroom. Inside lay dusty crates marked with old Brenner insignia, a hidden cache of brand-new rifles. She frowned as she pried open a crate. Gleaming arms. Unused. Who? Why? Jonas swallowed. Left by the Brenners or planted by someone watching. Her breath caught. The festival's music drifted faintly through the walls. "Someone believes this piece is fragile," she said. He placed a hand on her shoulder. "But tonight, let them wait. Tomorrow, we decide." Delilah glanced at the rifles. In the lamplit night, their barrels reflected hope and threat in equal measure. She placed the crate's lid gently back. "For now, let's let Silver Ridge sleep in peace." Outside, lanterns swayed, and the lamb bleated softly from its perch by Delilah's side, a heartbeat of innocence, grounded in a town's unwavering resolve. Silver Ridge's dawn chorus was punctuated by the rumble of wagons and soft neighing from the stables. Delilah Montgomery stood at the edge of town alongside Gideon Markham and Jonas Wilkes, the hidden rifles locked away safely in the community Hall's armory. Today's mission: deliver those rifles to the newly formed Defense Council and train volunteers in safe handling, ensuring the town was ready if darkness ever returned. They reached the town square as Harriet Fields, the school trustee turned council leader, addressed a gathered crowd. "We stand here not as cowards, but as guardians," Harriet announced. "These rifles are our last line of defense. Let us train responsibly and protect what we've built." Applause swelled as Delilah stepped forward. She felt the lamb stir in her satchel, its soft bleat grounding her resolve. "Safety is our priority," she said. "No weapon leaves this square without proper oversight. We train our hands and hearts alike." Gideon organized small training teams. Jonas demonstrated proper loading. Doc Crowley explained first aid for wounds. Neighbors guided neighbors, laughter mingling with caution. By afternoon, rifles had become tools of empowerment rather than fear. Delilah watched as Wilson Carter, a timid schoolteacher, hit his first target solidly. It was a tin can, but his grin rivaled any silversmith's handiwork. Evening brought shadows creeping across the fields. Delilah and Gideon rode along the perimeter, lanterns clinking at each post. The wind whispered of distant hills. Jonas broke the silence. Training successful. But these rifles, they came from Springfield's arsenal. Someone with military connections. Delilah frowned. "Sympathizer or saboteur?" Gideon shrugged. "Either way, they wanted us to have arms. That's unusual kindness." A distant caw echoed from the trees. The trio exchanged wary looks. At the northern gate, the night watch uncovered a fresh Set of footprints, no rifles, but cracked cartridge cases leading east toward the abandoned mill. Delilah's heart raced. She signaled Gideon and Jonas. Looks like we have one more mystery to solve. They followed the trail under waning moonlight. Rustling in the undergrowth, Jonas halted two figures sprinting ahead, rifles slung. Delilah and Gideon gave chase. The first figure nearly escaped until Delilah's derringer crack echoed. Moonlight glinted on a falling rifle. The young man collapsed, clutching his shoulder, breath ragged. Gideon cuffed him gently. The second figure retreated into the woods, but Jonas subdued him with practiced ease. Under the lantern's glow, the pair revealed themselves as returning militiamen, recent recruits in training. Their eyes were ashamed. "Mayor Montgomery," one stammered. "We wanted to defend without orders. We found the rifles and—" Delilah's gaze was stern. "You broke trust. Weapons aren't toys. They're a covenant." He bowed. "We meant well," she exhaled. "I know. That's why I train you. We rebuild with compassion and discipline." Gideon nodded. "Take them home. And remember today's lesson." As they rode back, the lamb bleated softly. Delilah patted its head. "Even good intentions need guidance," she murmured. Beyond the trees, the silhouette of the syndicate's architect watched no longer from the mesa, but hidden behind Silver Ridge's guard, ready for the final move in this delicate chess. Game. Next. The Alliance's strength will be tested as Silver Ridge faces its greatest feast, the harvest, jubilee, and a final push from the syndicate's last loyalists. Golden afternoon light filtered through the barn's open doors as Silver Ridge prepared for the harvest jubilee, the culmination of Delilah Montgomery's tenacity and the town's unity. Tables lined the floor, groaning with fresh produce. Pumpkins, squash, jars of honey, and loaves of bread. Delilah, lamb tucked in her shawl, stood on a raised platform next to Harriet Fields and Gideon Markham. The community hall buzzed with laughter, music, and the scent of roasted turkey. "Welcome, Silver Ridge," Delilah called, voice bright. "Today we celebrate harvest, home, and the bonds we've forged in adversity." The crowd cheered, raising mugs of cider. Children danced in the center, while elders shared stories along the walls. As Delilah watched, she spotted a stranger leaning against a pillar, a gray-haired man in a threadbare coat, his gaze fixed on the festivities. Her smile faltered. She recognized those eyes, the Master Syndicate's face twisted by regret, having escaped capture under the mesa's storm. Her grip on the lamb tightened. She addressed the crowd again. "Let us feast." Music swelled as tables cleared. But Delilah's instincts hummed. Danger lurked. Gideon and Harriet flanked her. "Mayor," he whispered, "that man." She followed his gaze. "Yes." She stepped down, weaving through revelers toward the pillar. The man met her approach, expression unreadable. "Good to see you again," he said softly. She stopped. "Justice spoke for you on the mesa." He bowed his head. "I've come to atone." Delilah's eyes narrowed. "With words?" He produced a sealed letter. "Of every victim's family, names, restitution, pardons granted. I want to help rebuild." A murmur rose. Harriet stepped closer. "Proof?" The man shook the letter. "Rising dust from dry papyrus edges. My ledger. I want to restore what I destroyed." Delilah exchanged glances with Gideon. In his eyes, doubt and the weight of mercy. She turned back. "You'll work under supervision, first in the fields, then in the school. Your redemption earned, not granted." The man inclined his head. "Anything." A cheer erupted as Delilah raised her hand. She guided him toward the food table, handing him a carving knife. "Start by feeding us." He nodded. The lamb bleated. Softly, Delilah smiled. Outside, the night sky shimmered. Fireworks homemade by old Henderson burst overhead. Lanterns swayed as the final sparkler died. Delilah returned to the stage, gazing at a town unbroken. The lamb stirred and bleated, as if in applause. She lifted its head. "This is our home," she said, "and we stand together always." Beyond the celebration, the horizon held promise and vigilance. Silver Ridge had weathered fury and deceit. In its heart remained a widow's unyielding spirit, her lamb, her legacy, the banner under which they all marched toward a brighter dawn. The day after the Jubilee dawned clear and still, a calm after the celebratory storm. Delilah Montgomery woke before the sun, the lamb nestled safe at her feet. She stepped onto the dew-kissed porch of the community hall, where farmers replaced celebratory banners with practical tools, rakes, hoes, and seeds marking the shift from feast to function. Gideon Markham joined her, holding 2 steaming mugs. He offered one. "Late night?" She sipped, eyes on the barn's newly painted doors. "Late celebrations lead to early chores," he laughed softly. True enough, but there was no rest for guardians. A whistle echoed from the distant fields, a signal from Harriet Fields. Delilah and Gideon mounted horses and galloped toward the schoolhouse where Harriet and Jonas awaited beneath the flagpole. "What is it?" Delilah asked. Harriet held out a telegram, its corners damp with morning dew. Delilah took it, glancing at the scrawled message. "To Mayor Montgomery. A contingent from Carson City jurisdiction arrives tomorrow to commend Silver Ridge's resilience. Be ready, Governor Stanton." Her brow furrowed. Gideon read over her shoulder. "Looks like your stories reached the Capitol." Delilah folded the telegram. "They'll want speeches, formalities. But we're not disbanding the night watch or ceding our authority." Jonas chimed in. "Everybody's talking about your leadership. Think they'll offer you a bigger post?" Delilah's gaze drifted to the lamb. "My place is here." They rode back, determined to prepare Silver Ridge for the dignitaries' cleaning streets, preparing refreshments, organizing demonstrations of the militia's training. That afternoon, Delilah convened the council. "We honor the governor's visit, but remember, we're hosting as equals, not supplicants. Our town stands on its own merits." Council members nodded in agreement. Rose Cooper volunteered to oversee refreshments, while Blake Edwards organized a militia drill display. As evening settled, Delilah wandered to the barn's loft where the community's recollections were stored. Letters, newspaper clippings, and a locket that once belonged to Sarah. She held the locket, tracing the delicate engraving. A sigh escaped her lips. Gideon appeared at the door. "Big day tomorrow." She snapped the locket shut. "Biggest day yet. But I couldn't have asked for better company." He stepped inside, offering his arm. "Shall we finalize the welcome speech?" She smiled, taking his arm. Together, they descended into the barn, ready to greet the governor and showcase the hard-won unity of Silver Ridge. Tomorrow, Silver Ridge's legend would reach new ears, but under Delilah's watch, its heart would remain unchanged, steadfast, united, and brave. The morning sun rose over Silver Ridge in a banner of gold and rose, heralding the governor's arrival. Delilah Montgomery stood before the crowd at the newly refurbished community hall, lamb at her side, Gideon Markham at her back. A crisp salute from the night watch framed the dignitaries stepping from the governor's carriage. Governor Stanton, a tall man with a silver mustache and eyes bright with admiration, tipped his hat. Beside him, Chief Inspector Hawley from Carson City quietly observed the town. Delilah Montgomery stepped forward. "Governor Stanton, thank you for honoring Silver Ridge with your visit. This town's strength was tested by fire, flood, and treachery. Yet through unity and courage, we reclaimed our home and our future." Stanton nodded, voice resonant. "Silver Ridge stands as an example to all territories. When people stand together under fair law and honest leadership, no darkness can prevail." He gestured to the assembled militia. "Marshal Markham, your vigilance saved countless lives." Gideon dipped his head as the crowd cheered. Governor Stanton then addressed Delilah again. "And you, Mrs. Montgomery, have proven that leadership knows no boundaries. I offer you a place on my council in Carson City to carry your vision across the territory. A hush fell. Delilah looked to Gideon, then to the lamb nestled against her shawl, then back to the governor. My first duty is here, she said simply. Silver Ridge remains my home, and its people my family. Until they no longer need me, I cannot leave. Stanton smiled, respect evident. Then may Silver Ridge prosper under your stewardship, and may its example light the path for others. The governor presented Delilah with a silver emblem, a badge symbolizing justice and unity. She accepted it, tears gleaming in her eyes. Later, as the governor's carriage departed and Carson City's dignitaries waved farewell, Delilah stood on her porch, lamb softly bleating. Gideon joined her, handing her a warm blanket. Together, they watched the horizon. You were offered so much, he whispered. She met his gaze. But I was never meant for courts in distant cities. My place is here, where boots stir dust on long-forgotten roads and a barn stands rebuilt. In a widow's name, he smiled, lifting the lamb. Home. She laid a hand on his shoulder. Home. Behind them, Silver Ridge bustled, children returning to the schoolhouse. Farmers tending fields, neighbors greeting each other with renewed hope. In the distance, the old mesa stood silent under the morning sun, a testament to the trials overcome. And in the heart of it all, Delilah Montgomery, a widow, a leader, and a guardian, held her lamb with steady resolve, ready for whatever new dawn might bring. 2 more great stories are next. Don't miss them. Subscribe and turn on notifications.